Hello. Thank you so much for joining me today. How you doing? 19 weird things Swedish people do that you should do too. That's the part that really got me interested. I should do it too? Are you sure? And also the fact that it has 1.4 million views. Oh my god. That's like a lot of views for 19 weird things Swedish people do. Interesting. And it's by Saga Johanna. Link down below. Check out her channel. Let's see. I'm very intrigued. I don't know anything about Sweden.
I hope you are doing amazing. Hey everyone. I hope you are doing amazingly. Today I'm going to share the craziest, most wonderful, and best Swedish traditions that I think you should try too. From how we cut our pizza, to how we raise our children, to how we sleep, here are some of my favorite Swedish traditions that I think everyone in the whole entire world should do. So let's get started.
You cut your pizza so amazingly that you think everyone else in the world should do it that way, okay?
We cut our pizza with scissors. This is also a minimalist hack because you no longer need to use a silly pizza cutter that you literally cannot use for anything. Instead, just use your kitchen scissors to cut pizza. Cutting pizza is such an easy and fun way to slice.
Why does that sound difficult? Like she's saying it like it's so easy and so convenient to just pick up a piece of pizza or pick up a whole pizza and cut it with scissors. Maybe it's because pizzas here in America are this big. They're not like that.
Slice pizza. One of my favorite hacks for a happy marriage and a Swedish tradition that I grew up with is to have separate duvets. Having separate duvets.
I don't know what a duvet is. I'm trying to think. It's in there. It's in my brain somewhere. Duvet. Is that like a bidet? Separate bidets would make sense. Separate duvets? I don't remember.
Makes so much more sense. It is so much more comfortable. You never have to fight with your partner over a
The blanket on there.
blanket, and it just makes a world of difference.
That's actually that's such a smart hack. Oh my god. That is a smart hack.
If you have one duvet, it's big and bulky and it's crazy. Just try two.
This is what all Swedish people do. Swedish people are geniuses. Because like, oh my god, the fighting over the duvet. That just shows how like stupid I am. I mean, we call it a duvet too. I just forgot. I mean, I'm not calling myself stupid. I'm just saying like I'm not very I don't know. I don't, I'm a simple man, you know what I mean? It's a blanket to me. It's just a blanket. Actually, we call it a comforter as like the layman's term. Anyway, the amount of times I've woken up in the middle of the night with no blanket on because my wife has rolled into a burrito. Yeah, great hack.
Duvets and see if it makes you feel any better. Speaking of duvets and bedding, the next thing that is really important that you should try that we all do in Sweden is that we have a duvet cover and a duvet inner and a sheet to make our bed. We don't have any top sheets, we don't have any blankets. That is absolutely disgusting. Sorry, but it is because you don't really wash them as often. You need to have a duvet if it's cold in your country, and you need to put the duvet inside of the duvet cover, and then you wash the duvet cover weekly, and this way you have a very clean bed.
Why don't you wash blankets? I don't see that's the part that I lost her on. Why don't you wash blankets? Is it because you don't have, does Sweden have drying machines? Like I know a lot of European countries don't have, drying machines as much, and I'm sure it would take a while to dry a big comforter outside in the sun. Drying machines in Sweden. Most apartments in Sweden have communal drying rooms. I don't know. This isn't helpful. Anyway, we'll wash the comforter, by itself. Just shove it all in there and wash it. I don't see a problem with that.
When I first came to New Zealand, I was taught about the idea of a top
New Zealand?
sheet, and you sort of put the duvet on top, but you never really encase it. But that means that when you move around throughout the bed, your body will touch the duvet inner, and you simply cannot wash that once a week because it doesn't last as long as if you do that. So absolutely, if you have a duvet inner and it's cold in your country, put a duvet outer.
Maybe I'm disgusting. I don't know, but she sounds very like and maybe I mean I don't know if this is a Swedish thing or just her, but she sounds very I don't want to say germaphobe because that seems like almost like an insult, and I'm not trying to insult her. But it's like she's clearly very clean. She's very concerned with like, oh, you don't want to touch the duvet because then it'll be dirty, and then you know. I just don't worry about that as to that extent. But maybe that's because I'm disgusting. I'm open to that idea.
On it, and in the summer when it's too warm, you just put the duvet inner away and you just sleep with the duvet outer as a blanket. Easy. One of my favorite Swedish sayings is something like, there is no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. Very literal and very Swedish, but as a child this was normally printed on our weekly mailer at kindergarten or at school, which basically meant for our parents to remember to put proper clothing on us because we would be outside all day, no matter the weather.
I like that. That's really all day. What are y'all doing in Swedish school? That you're outside all day. But that's awesome. I really like that because there's a phrase kind of like that I heard that I like, and it's you know, if there's no like difficult job. Wait, I'm screwing this up. I don't know, man. I'm sitting here trying to think of the correct phrase, and it's beyond me. But it's like, you know, if the job is difficult, whatever you're trying to do is difficult, you know, as far as like doing a job around the house, then it's not that the job is difficult. It's you don't have the right tool. Did that make any damn sense? You know, if you're trying to cut a bolt with a freaking saw or with scissors, well, yeah, it's going to be really hard. But if you had bolt cutters, it would be easy. Does that make sense? Anyway, it's the same kind of idea. I like it.
I think most people these days tend to stay inside when it's bad weather outside instead of just going out there. But by putting on proper clothing, it makes it so much easier to be outside in all weathers, and it's so much better for your health to be outside and breathe in the microbiome rather than
wow, look at that.
Just staying inside and watching TV. Another Swedish health hack for you.
Oh, a beautiful landscape.
You guys. One of the things that I didn't think was weird, but that became obvious to me the moment I moved abroad, was the fact that we don't talk about race. The first time I heard the word Caucasian, I was 20 and living in Japan, and before that I had never heard any of these words, and it's just not something we talk about. Which brings me on to the next point, is that you never have to disclose this information if you, for example, go to the bank or going to the university.
Wow, that's interesting. It does make me wonder what the demographics of Sweden are. Let's see. At least as far as race. Come on, guys. We can find it. We can do it. Race. I guess she wasn't kidding, guys. It actually is difficult to find this race breakdown in Sweden. I mean, I haven't tried like super hard, but I think I just want to move on. You know, I was just curious. I thought it would be easy to find. All I can find is that the majority of the population are ethnic Swedes, meaning that they can trace back their heritage for 12 generations minimum to Sweden, which I find remarkable. Holy crap, that's a lot. Anyway.
And that information is absolutely not necessary for the bank to know when I'm opening my bank account, and frankly, it's ridiculous. So do what the Swedish people do.
I mean, yeah, that's ridiculous. I'm trying to think, like, when you open a bank account, pretty much anything you do here in America, I feel like it'll be like well, not anything, but anything of an official capacity. It'll be like, what's your ethnicity or what's your race, which is weird. Isn't that weird? I think that is weird. Unless there is some kind of, you know, if it's for medical records or something where there might, you know, there are some medical differences that different races are more prone to certain things or whatever. But apart from that, it's pretty weird. Pretty weird.
I guess.
But at the bank? I don't know, maybe. Probably.
Whilst we're speaking about politically sensitive subjects, let's speak about children. In Sweden, we treat our children with respect, and we treat them as already humans with
respect? Why would you treat a little kid with respect? They're just a stupid little kid. No, I'm just kidding. I respect kids.
which is something I really, really enjoy, and I think everyone should do. Kids don't have to address older people in a certain way. Kids don't really have to act in a certain way. Kids are really allowed to be kids, which means they're allowed to make mistakes.
That's quite interesting. They don't have to address older people in a certain way. You know, because that's, in a lot of cultures, that's a sign of respect for adults. You know, it's kind of interesting to kind of flip it and be like, well, we should respect the kids. Yeah, it's something to think about. Okay. I mean, over here in America, kids typically will address adults like, they'll say like Mr. or Mrs. such and such. Sometimes. Or not. Really, here in Indiana, kids actually mostly just call adults by their first name, which is interesting.
They're allowed to be upset.
I guess Indiana's a lot like Sweden. Said no one ever.
They don't have to hug someone if they don't want to. They don't have to kiss someone if they don't want to. Just completely reasonable things that I think every country should adopt. Kids are the best thing in the world, so I absolutely think we should treat kids with the utmost respect. Now, this one, I don't know if it's for all of Sweden, but it's definitely something I've experienced a lot of times. But that is people, when I get invited to dinner parties, people ask me, is there something you don't eat? My goodness, this has saved so much trouble having a dinner party or going to a dinner party. I normally tell my best friend when I go to dinners at hers that I don't eat coriander or cilantro because I really, really don't like it. And it makes it a lot easier. One of the most important Swedish traditions is being...
Interesting. I mean, easier... That's really like respectful. Once again, you know, it's very considerate to ask people, you know, is there something you don't eat? But if you're having a large get together, if you ask every single person, is there something you don't like, something you don't like, something you don't eat? What are you gonna make? Because people have such a different wide range of taste, but it's definitely important as far as allergies. But okay. I see that. I'm getting the impression that Swedish people are just very considerate. That's good.
Being whole and clean. Now, what does this mean? This is a deeply rooted tradition that goes so far back in Swedish history, but ultimately it means to always present yourself as best as you possibly can. Every time we had friends over, my family would just massively clean the entire house, not because it was necessarily dirty, but it's so important to uphold the standard of being whole and clean in Swedish society. Another thing that I think is crazy that other countries have and that we don't have.
I like that. I mean, there's something similar to that over here in America. I don't know if I would say we massively clean, but certainly clean before guests come over. That would be you know, the nice thing to do.
Is that we don't really use the expression from scratch. Growing up, I didn't know that you could buy cake mixes. I had only seen it on TV. I had never really heard of it. I didn't know you could buy any sort of pre-made food.
I think that's great. I can see where she's going with this, and I think that's great. In fact, just literally like a few days ago, I was randomly laying on the couch and I was thinking, you know, I've never baked anything from scratch. But you think about it, you know, when you use a cake mix, that's like, why even use that? It's just combining a few ingredients. Like making a cake or whatever, it's not that many ingredients, you know? Like in the cake mix. Why not just do it yourself and make it more authentically from scratch rather than using this pre-made cake mix? It barely saves you any time, and it just makes it more inauthentic. That was a random thought I had, so that's cool.
Food, or something that we call halvfabrikat, which technically means
Halvfabrikat.
half-processed foods. Of course, this might differ a little bit, but in general, we don't say that we make things from scratch in Sweden. If you make a cake, you will make it from scratch. That is just how you make a cake. There's no other way to make a cake. You either buy it from the bakery or you make it from scratch.
That's cool.
And I think that's also one of the reasons why we are quite a healthy country. One of the best Swedish culture traditions that...
True, because it's a little bit more time consuming to make a cake. So you don't make as much cakes. No, it's also just got to do with the better ingredients, right?
You've probably already heard about is fika. A fika is when you have a coffee, normally, or a tea, with a sweet treat, and you normally have it in the afternoon, but you can actually have it whenever. And this is one of the most common things we do when we go on dates or meet up with our friends. It's so cozy, it's really fun, but I also really like that it's...
So it's kind of like how British people have a biscuit and tea. Okay. Over here in America, you're not really drinking coffee in the afternoon. I mean, some people do, but a little bit unusual.
The few things in Sweden where you can date someone or meet someone without drinking alcohol. Now, fika means different things in different languages, especially in Italian, so I would use it with caution and use it only when you're in Sweden. Go.
Now I need to know. What was it? Fika? It means cool? Oh, I thought it would be like a bad word.
Going back to childcare, another thing that I really appreciate about Swedish culture that you should try if you have children is co-sleeping. My parents co-slept with me and my brother.
Wow, that is so controversial. It's like not even funny. Well, I mean, it is funny, but that is controversial right there. To just say that like that is over here in America, that is faux pas. You don't co-sleep here in America. I mean, of course, some people do. But as far as what you're supposed to do and what the doctors will tell you to do, no. Not until they're at least, 1.5 or so.
Everyone I know, I think, co-slept. My sister co-slept with me or with her parents when she was with them, and I've never ever had any issues, heard any issues, or hear anyone talk badly about co-sleeping.
That's interesting. You must do it very safely. I mean, I don't know. That's really fascinating because my wife works in the hospital, and there have been multiple different occasions. I can think of 3 off the top of my head where the parent fell asleep with their baby. It's usually by accident here in America, and accidentally rolled on top of them or whatever, and the baby passed away. Now, of course, she works in a hospital, so she's going to hear, a large amount of bad things happening. All sorts of bad things happen at the hospital, and people go to the hospital for it. So, how common is it actually? I don't know.
Co-sleeping with your baby makes so much more sense because you don't have to wake up in the middle of the night and go into another room. Also, your baby's brain is not...
Yeah, I mean, it would be super convenient.
...developed enough to know that you're not in the room, which makes it feel unsafe. Co-sleeping is literally the best option for sleeping with your baby. My dad built this really clever little half crib that he put next to the bed with a mat.
Okay, see, I mean, that's a lot different. I mean, when I hear co-sleeping, I think of like sleeping in the bed. This is, okay. That's awesome. I'm very jealous. I want that thing. Although that would still be considered a little bit of a faux pas here in America, but I mean, I just using common sense can look at that and say, yeah, that looks pretty safe.
Mattress and made it level to the bed, so I could be in the bed co-sleeping there at the same time as my mom was in the bed. Co-sleeping shouldn't be a term, I don't think. It shouldn't be a trend. It shouldn't be an idea. It should just be the most common way for sleeping with your baby. Another thing that is common...
It definitely seems like the most natural way, like obviously before all sorts of rules and regulations and studies and stuff, did people co-sleep? Of course. I assume. Of course they did. A lot of people. Most people, I'm sure.
In Sweden, that isn't very common abroad, is that both men and women call themselves feminists. In Sweden, people are generally more educated about feminism than in other countries, and I really like that we use...
Okay. I mean, yeah, some men over here call themselves feminists.
...the word more casually and without so much attachment to it that comes from other countries. A weird thing about Sweden that I thought was a bit very quite...
I mean, it is an interesting thing, I guess. Well, it's a very loaded term nowadays, unfortunately. Over here in America, it's got all sorts of connotations like, there's literally different waves. People refer to the first wave feminism, second wave, third wave. So it's like, ugh, and so, but it is typically women who use the term. But there are men, absolutely. There's men who call themselves feminists.
Strange is that our school is a lot easier than any other school in the world. Now, I don't know
School is easier.
exactly how accurate this is, but I know that in general in Sweden, we are very educated. However, our school, especially I think middle school and preschool, is a lot easier than, for example, in England or in New Zealand. We have way less assignments, way less homework, but somehow it still works. Unfortunately, this trend is changing and we're becoming a bit more like the rest of the world, but I really think homework is ridiculous and we shouldn't have it. So.
I totally kind of agree. I mean, I like how I said I totally kind of agree. But I guess I would have to think about it a little bit more, but it does seem a bit ridiculous to give kids, like little kids, homework when they're kids, like 7 years old. That is a little bit ridiculous because obviously you only get to be a kid once, and a kid should really be out there playing. They should be outside playing for as much time as possible. That would probably be the best thing for their development. Better than sitting at home looking at letters, probably. But on the other hand, maybe it does teach them good work ethic for when, because at some point they're going to have to start doing homework. I think that I kind of agree. Probably cut the homework out until at least 5th grade or something. That makes sense to me.
So that's that. One weird thing we do in Sweden, but I think we shouldn't do, so disregard this one, is that we don't really date. Although I'm Swedish, I've never dated a Swedish guy because I think I've only had 2 Swedish guys ever hit on me in my entire life. But in general, we don't really date. We don't really have a period of dating where you can see other people, or normally you're just sort of not together and then you're sort of together. Dating in Sweden is very weird. That is why I've been so unsuccessful at it.
I don't understand. How do you get together if you don't date? That's like, that sounds very risky. You're just kind of like, hey, I don't really know you, but do you want to be together now?
And yeah, I find it a bit uncomfortable. And I think Sweden, in fact, should adopt how people date in other countries because I think it makes way more sense and it's a much more adult way of dating. Something we do in Sweden is that we learn English very.
I guess you would probably get what, I don't even know what to call it because you don't date. So I guess you would become boyfriend and girlfriend with somebody you kind of knew. Like you were friends. I guess that would kind of make sense.
Early. This also makes so much sense because it's easier to learn a language when you're young. And voila, most people speak English, which is such a useful skill to have if you want to live in another country or have any job where you don't work in Sweden.
She does speak amazing English.
All right, so we're going even more political. Time for religion. One thing we don't do in Sweden is we're not really religious or go to church, even though Wikipedia might say otherwise. So this has changed since then, but when I grew up and my entire generation, we couldn't choose to be enrolled in the Swedish church system. That just happened automatically when we were born, no matter
Swedish church system.
if we were baptized or not. We just went straight into the Swedish church system, which is also the system you have to be in if you want to be buried in a churchyard or if you want to be married in a church, if you want to get baptized in a church, etc., etc.
Bit of a foreign concept for me. I didn't know there was a Swedish church system. Obviously there's not an American church system.
So this is a quite fun fact compared to other countries, because if you look at Wikipedia, it says most Swedish people are religious, but that's simply because we are enrolled in church. Now, say what you want about religion, but I, for one, am a person who thinks that we should practice what we preach. And since most people have lots of sex before marriage, drink a ridiculous amount of alcohol, and do all other sorts of gluttonous things, I think it makes complete sense that most people don't go to church. I remember going to church in kindergarten.
I, th- I think a lot of religious people would say those people are the ones that need to go to church. Uh, I really don't. To me, it's like, do whatever you want
for our summer
as far as religion.
ending, and I remember my priest had leather pants and played a rock and roll guitar, which we all thought was very
Honestly, I see lots of pros and cons to all sorts of religions. I mean, religions have a lot of, there's a lot of good community that goes along with religion and stuff like that. That's a big pro. Of course, there's plenty of cons. But yeah.
very, very fun. We are a land of wonderful and quirky, weird, strange traditions. In Sweden, we have something called jantelagen, which practically means be humble, but also never talk well about yourself. So there are pros and cons about this law.
Never talk well about yourself.
It's an unwritten law. But one of the good things about it is that Swedish people are in general very comfortable and quiet, or maybe...
I'm sorry, I can't even believe that. Out of everything I've heard so far, this probably is the most culturally different thing, maybe, if I'm reading this correct. There are 10 rules in the laws defined by Sandemos, all expressive of variations on a single theme and usually referred to as a homogeneous unit. You are not to think you're anyone special or that you're better than us. The 10 rules state you're not to think you are anything special. You're not to think you are as good as we are. You're not to think you are smarter than we are. Wow. Yeah, I mean, the reason I say that this is so, like, opposite American culture is because American culture, like, growing up, it's kind of all about being told, you are special, but it's being told everyone is special. Oh, you're special, you're special, you're special, you're special. I understand that this is obviously referring to, you're not as good as the collective. Us all together are greater than the sum of us individuals. That part I understand, and that's pretty neat. But being told, rule number 1, you're not to think you are anything special. Wow, that's the opposite of what they tell you as a kid over here in America. Very interesting. Which, of course, I understand. I appreciate humbleness. And there's honestly nothing more irritating than total arrogance. So I do understand where this is coming from. But I think it just illustrates that in America, the individual, it's a very individualist country for the most part.
Maybe better is to say not loud people. So it's very nice to be around Swedish people. No one ever yells. No one ever tries to really be the center of attention. No one really speaks
Yeah. Okay. It's not like America.
really loudly. One of my favorite things we do in Sweden, which does not work in English, is that we don't really have a word for please. Now you can use snälla, which means like most kindly or can you kindly, or you can use tack, which means thank you, but we don't really have a word for please. I love learning languages because this is those little parts about a language and a culture that you won't really learn unless you know the language. So I love speaking English. I love using the word please. But I also love speaking Swedish and being able to sneak in a tack or a snälla where Swedish people normally don't and sound like the most friendly and polite person in the world. So
Interesting. I mean, I don't know why I randomly think about these things. I guess this is just a coincidence, but I was randomly thinking about the word please the other day as well. Because it's interesting, it's very interesting to me how someone can ask you to do something, and whether or not they say this word, that's why it's called in America, it's called the magic word. Maybe in all of English, it's called the magic word. Please. Because all of a sudden, you can ask someone, even a total stranger, to do something. And if you use that word, please, it's a total game changer. You could go from being told to go screw yourself, you know what I mean? Like, who are you to tell me to do something or ask me to do something? I don't even know you. But if you say the word please, all of a sudden it's like, oh, yeah, sure. It's an interesting word. It's a magic word.
So it's a win-win. So, okay, my friends, I did not think we'd go this political. I have written this video down. It's very funny because when I translate these very regular Swedish ideas to English, they suddenly become so much more political. Swedish people are generally extremely nice, and it's such a nice culture to live in. And I think that's why so many people move back to Sweden when they want to have a family, because it's such a safe and reasonable and wholesome place for kids to grow up. And part of that is because these lovely
It does seem pretty magical.
and quirky ideas that we have. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I had so much fun.
That was really fascinating. You know, I don't know, I didn't know almost anything about Sweden and Swedish culture, so that was really something new and interesting. Thank you so much for watching. 30 minutes, oh my God. Okay. Sorry if I blabbed on about something. I'll see you guys tomorrow.